Corps. So 2 weeks after I graduated from Carleton, this was June of 1987, 2 weeks after that, I went off to Mali in West Africa. I must confess I didn't know where Mali was. I had to look at a map. My relatives, my family, thought I was going to Maui or Bali, two very different sorts of places. Mali's a landlocked country, semi-arid, Sahara Desert in the north, semi-forested, tropical in the south. And I was an agricultural volunteer there for 2 years in a very small village of 200 people. I had French from college, but there were no other French speakers there, so I very quickly learned a local language, Bambara. If you're depending on a language for your food and your ability to get around, it's incredible how motivating that can be. I was affiliated with the state agricultural agency, but my counterpart was somewhat far away, so I was more or less on my own. And I absolutely fell in love with agriculture and natural resource management in that part of the world. I became increasingly intrigued by kind of the ingenuity of local people under very difficult circumstances to produce food, to manage their resources sustainably. That was different than the perception of outsiders. The state agricultural agency often berated local people as being ignorant and backward. But I think living with that community, speaking the local language, being fed by them, I really grew to appreciate their perspective. So based on that experience, I had decided that I wanted to make a career in international development. So I went back, I got two very applied master's degrees at the University of Michigan, and I more or less made a 10-year career in international development. I worked for Save the Children UK, which is a British nonprofit. I also worked for the World Bank Environment Program, as well as the U.S. Agency for International Development. And if I think about that experience, I drew two major lessons from it. One is that at the local level, you could be doing incredibly innovative, interesting work. For example, in Mali, Peace Corps was promoting a participatory forest program. We wanted to work with local people, get them to plant tree species that would be useful to them. But at the same time, this is the late 1980s, Mali had a paramilitary forestry service, literally that wore military uniforms, that carried guns around. If people violated rules, or even if they didn't, but they were accused of doing so, they would be imprisoned and thrown in jail. So my point here is that you could have this very innovative approach, but if national laws or the national kind of policy was not consistent with that, this kind of local level progressive approach would always be limited by broader national or even international constraints. So that's one lesson I drew from that experience. Second lesson, and this came more from the time I spent working at higher levels in Washington, D.C., places like the World Bank, the U.S. Agency for International Development. I met a lot of very interesting, well-meaning, well-educated people, but I often encountered two problems. In some instances, you had young professionals who had gone straight through all the way to the PhD. They had a very sound grasp of theory and the way international development should work, but they hadn't spent a lot of time at the local level, a space where that theory might have been challenged by local level realities. Also, you had older folks working for those agencies, also well-intended, but folks who had oftentimes not been in the field for 20 to 30 years. So they were now somewhat removed from that kind of grassroots experience. And the issue was at the time is that these institutions, these agencies were implementing reforms, okay, many of them of the neoliberal economic variety, and imposing them on developing countries, and a lot of this was going on in Africa. And theoretically they knew how the policy should have worked, but they didn't have the kind of local level experience that would lead them to question that theory. So those were two conundrums that I was wrestling with when I eventually got out of development. And I did so, truth be told, probably for family reasons. My spouse and I wanted to come back to the U.S. and start a family, and development work, while fascinating, was a bit unstable. And I decided that academia was a way that I could stay engaged with those issues but have a more kind of stable lifestyle. So I was fishing around at a time for a field that would help me address these two conundrums that I had encountered in development. And in particular, when I had been working for Save the Children UK, we were working on hunger issues, food insecurity issues, doing a lot of mapping. I started running into a lot of geographers. Geography is much stronger in the British Academy than in the American one. And I started reading geographers, people like Paul Richards, Michael Watts, Piers Blakey, and I was very impressed by their work. And I thought this is the approach that I need to think about when addressing development issues in Africa. So what I liked about geography was its tradition of field work. It wasn't an armchair science, but it required you to actually get out and collect information and to talk to people. I appreciated its very central human environment tradition. So looking at environmental questions from both the biophysical side as well as from the social side. And thirdly, I really appreciated geographers' emphasis on scale. So understanding processes that operate at different scales and how those might be connected. So, you could look at something happening at the local level, how is someone managing their farm field, for example, but then you would be prompted to think about how is national level policy influencing what that farmer is doing, or how are international trading regimes influencing what they're doing. So that's what brought me to geography.